This is Dr. Stephen Daniel with Quantum Techniques. We're up and running again with new filming equipment. And so today I'm going to have a little bit longer YouTube because this is a pretty big subject that I've been studying for many years. And it's really addressing the consciousness of healing versus that of chronic illness. And if you've had chronic pain, chronic illness, a lot of this is going to make sense to you. There's some great authors. There's many of them, but some I'll even read from some. Guy Finley, Vernon Howard, Michael Singer, Anthony DeMello. There's many, many others. But, their message really is pain and suffering are part of life. But we tend to get caught in a time zone that's not the present moment. And the present moment is the only time you experience gratitude or the divine or healing. And I know, you guys know my story. When I was 13, I had a severe head injury. And then severe mold exposure when I was 23. And I had heavy metal toxicity because I'd been a welder without protection since I was 12. So at 23, I started chronic migraines, which for the first time this year, after 57 years, I do not have chronic migraines, head and neck pain. But what that meant was for 57 years, it was too painful to live in the present moment. At least that was my thought. I thought the pain was something I was supposed to resist or get rid of. I never thought it was there to teach me something. I didn't know how to feel grateful for it. I didn't know how to say, well, this is something I'm supposed to learn from. So for 57 years, I've never procrastinated, ever, on anything, because I never knew if I was going to be able to function the next day. So, like in graduate school or college, everybody waits till the last minute to get their final exams done. I mean, they're all their term papers. Mine were always done by midterms because I never knew if I was going to have a weekend that I could function or not. Never stayed up late and studied at night. If I got up early, well, I've always gotten up early, but if I got up early and I wasn't in pain, I'd get all my studying done. But what this meant was, like everyone with chronic suffering, physical or emotional, I was always reminded of my past suffering. And then all my energy was, how can I not do this again? How can I prevent this? Because something that I learned when I was doing clinical hypnosis for pain control, when somebody was in chronic pain, something that you can do in hypnosis is to create amnesia. So if I could create amnesia for my headaches, where I forgot all my headaches, then I cut my actual suffering by 2/3. Because when you're in pain, a third of it is, I'm hurting right now. A third of it is, I remember my worst headache. And a third of it is, I expect this one's going to get that bad. And that's my future. The other thing in hypnosis is if you can immerse somebody in the present moment, a metaphor I'd often use is the touch of their baby's skin or like the softness of a puppy's ear. But another teaching metaphor I used is, people have had this experience or something similar. They're going to the movies, they slap their hand, they get their thumb caught in the door, and it really hurts. Or they got a bad headache. They go in, and it's a really great movie. They get really absorbed in it. And they lose awareness of their suffering for that 2 hours. The pain's not even there. And then they walk out in the theater, and there's the pain. Because they're not engaged in the present moment. So all these spiritual teachers are teaching how to live in the present moment. So I'm just going to go through some of this. The consciousness of healing is seeking a discontinuity of the known self. That's the self that always suffers. Okay. And it's seeking transformation of that self to something that your mind can't imagine. I can't imagine the person I am today. Last year, I couldn't imagine. The changes that have happened to me in the last 4 months, physically, emotionally, spiritually, are not something that nobody could have told me about because I wasn't on a level to even understand it. So I made the shift and I'm reaping the rewards. you know, the, the consciousness of suffering is you're always just seeking an improved version of yourself. You're not looking for transformation. You just don't want to hurt quite as much. But you don't want to lose who you are. And the problem is, if you've had chronic suffering, so much of who you are, what you identify with, is who you are as a suffering person. And you don't have to be that person. But your level of mind can't accept that or realize that. They can't imagine that even. So what we know is pain is a part of life. And the quote normal approach, I would say, but it's unhealthy, is to resist it, try to banish it. Well, that, the path knows it is here to teach me something. The answer is to be quiet and observe and learn. That's the consciousness thought, okay? Something from Michael Singer, which was real good, is that you are not actually your body. You're not the pain. You're not your thoughts. You're not your emotions. You're actually the watcher. And pain is inevitable in life. Suffering's optional. And how much you suffer depends on what time zone you're living in. If you're not living in the present moment, you're going to suffer. If you're trying to make sure you don't hurt like this tomorrow, you're going to suffer. It doesn't give you the ability to sit back without an emotional attachment and observe and say, what can I learn from this? When you resist a thing or cling to it, it creates restrictions around the energy of your heart. Your heart's your biggest energy center. It brings in energy and sends it out. If you resist something because of past pain that's not resolved, physically or emotionally, you're putting blockage. You start constricting that. Well, you can also, besides resisting the pain, cling to something good, like, oh, I had that wonderful love experience. I want that all the time. Again, we're made for experiences, good and bad. We experience them in this moment, we let them go, and they don't get stuck. They're not part of our history. They don't become who we are. It's an experience we had, but it's not who we are. And clinging or resisting leads to addiction too. And of course, we know so much of the treatments for pain and suffering is addictive. Michael Singer has a great metaphor that I really like in his book, The Untethered Soul. And he says, if you're quiet and you listen to that voice in your head. What's it telling you about your suffering? Oh man, it's really bad today. I think this might be the worst day it's ever been. No, I remember it was worst once, so it's probably going to get that bad today. And by the way, somebody else caused this, and it's going to get worse tomorrow. So there's either something I did or something somebody else did, but God sure didn't do his job, so I've got lots of people to blame for why I'm hurting. And all that keeps me out of the place of the present moment where I can try to learn from it. It's like, if you had a friend like that telling you how to live your life, would you listen to him? Or would you just walk away and say, I don't need you in my life anymore. You offer me nothing constructive. Well, we got to start learning the voices in our head are rarely our friends. Your imagination is great when you're creating a project like building a house or coming up with a theory. It's not very good in trying to solve your emotional suffering problems. That has to come from a higher source than the current level of thinking, which is largely responsible for your suffering. If you're living in your suffering story, then you are a victim of the terrorist within. And you have to be able to get to know this terrorist so that you can fire him. And if you quit resisting or listening to them, they're mechanical. They don't have any energy of their own. If you don't give them your energy, they will fade and they will disappear from your life. But that takes patience. Our job, it's like truth comes in its own perfect timing, not when we want it. And our job is to be patient, to watch and listen for those new truths. And that's how we get all these new scans. The complete healing of any chronic suffering, physical or emotional, always involves moving to a higher level of consciousness, because you can't fix a problem on the same level of consciousness that created the problem. It just doesn't work. That's in a sense, higher management. That's that divine inspiration source. And I think you also have to look at, is there some secondary gain in your suffering? Is this how you make your income? Okay. Is it a acceptable way in your life and circle to say no to people around you or yourself? Well, I don't feel good. I don't have to work today. Or to say please, meaning with a demand, you better take care of me because I'm in pain and you owe me. I can remember when I first started doing tapping work, face-to-face as a psychologist. And I'd worked with somebody, tremendous suffering, multiple personality disorder, lots and lots of abuse, very dramatic therapy, using EMDR. Usually there was so much violence. I had to have another male, a clergyman in the room, my size, so you're looking at, 235-pound guys, two of us, being able to contain a 115-pound woman going through abuse memories. And I remember I was so excited. And so instead of doing what we normally do, we did tapping on it. And in about 5 minutes, she got really quiet. She said, "What did you just do?" I said, "I tried something new. It gets rid of your pain." She was enraged. She said, "If you can get rid of my pain that quickly, my suffering it has no significance. It means nothing. I've been through nothing if you can get rid of it that easily." Well, they weren't ready to let go, and they didn't. They kept suffering. They didn't want me doing any of that tapping stuff on them. So, people adapt to what they've been, and it becomes their identity. The suffering consciousness always comes with guilt, anger, resentment, fear, panic, terror, unforgiveness, blame toward yourself, others, and God. Because life's not going the way your imagination said it's supposed to go, so somebody's going to have to pay and suffer for it. And because you always know what's supposed to be happening, right? I mean, I understand that pain and suffering, death and loss happens to everybody else. I mean, I can see that all around me, but it's not supposed to happen to me. I'm supposed to be different. And I hate to tell you this, but your imagination ain't the universe creator. It's really not. It's powerful in its own mind, but nowhere else. So you got to understand, the only time you can truly heal, experience God, divine love, or any love really whatsoever, is in the present moment in a place of gratitude, quiet, and patience. And, that's why we avoid the present moment when we're in pain, because we don't want to suffer. And you can't be fully present in the moment unless you find a higher level of consciousness and understanding and truth than the level of your suffering consciousness. Remember, all of life moments, the beautiful ones, the painful ones, are made to just pass through you. The pain and the ecstasy. And when we resist, block, or cling, we create heart blocks, avoidance, and addiction. I want to read 3 statements from Anthony DeMello that just, it's a different way of thinking. So the first one is, to be wronged is nothing unless you insist on remembering it. I'm going to ask you, why would you want to do that? It only punishes you. I mean, unforgiveness doesn't hurt anybody but you. And you can't heal chronic pain without a lot of forgiveness. Another thing he said is, may the peace of God disturb you always. Well, guess what? If you're not disturbed by life, then you're not learning and growing. Life's like a muscle. If it doesn't have any discomfort, you've not pushed yourself. You're not growing. What are you doing to numb yourself out? And then he says, and I like this one, it isn't falling in the river that causes you to drown. It's staying in. Having pain doesn't cause you to drown. It doesn't cause you to die. Okay, it doesn't cause your suffering. But staying in it with the automatic, quote, what we call normal response, is when you drown in it. And whatever anger, rage, hatred, resentment, blame you hold and want for another one, you have to give yourself a double portion first. And your portion is non-ending. They only get it if you're talking to them. The rest of the time, you're getting it. All the time. There is no healing or ability to be in the present moment to healing gratitude without forgiveness for everyone you can think of. Vernon Howard said this: truth approaches, and I kind of said it earlier, but not as eloquent. Truth approaches at its own wise pace. Our part is patient waiting and watching. The attempts to escape a problem is precisely what keeps it going, while an attempt to understand it will end it. We live life like the person walking in a crosswalk with earbuds in, not looking around. We're in great danger because we're not aware in the present moment of what's going on around us or inside of us. We're just listening to something in our head that's not real. The only true and safe, deep identity we can have is I am the awareness of the present moment. And the deepest and highest form of meditation is when I become aware of my awareness. Think about these. This is a lot of information very quickly, but reading these authors and understanding that if you want to shift in suffering, you have to shift your consciousness. That's the non-physical part. That's something I can guide you towards, but you got to do the work. So we'll continue to be back with more exciting things with quantum techniques, and I wish you a blessed day.